So what's going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another Zombies Q&A on the channel, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you're going to enjoy today's video, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content. But let's get into it. Here we go, and enjoy. So the first question of today is from when Evan does this, and you say, "Hey BOA, what happened to the Primis children after Revelations?" Well, this is a difficult one to answer because of course we never get to see what happens after Rev. That is the beginning of the end of our cycle. After Revelations, Primis are sent back to the Great War, where the cycle resets. So the story doesn't continue after Revelations, hence why we never learn what takes place after. In the ending cutscene, we see Maxis and Sophia sacrifice themselves to banish the Apothecans. They plunge themselves into the Apothecan sun, and then Dr. Monty sends Primis back to the Great War, resetting the cycle. And if we go to the cinematic trailers for Revelations, we can see the children in the house alone with Dr. Monty. I assume this is after the Rev ending, because at this point in time we see Samantha looking out of the window up into the sky. The only reason I can see her doing this is she's looking up at her father, who she's just seen throw himself into the Apothecan sun. So it seems this cutscene happens after Revelations finishes and shows us just for a second it is Monty and the children alone in the house. And also, if we go over to one of the radios that we hear from Dr. Maxis in Alpha Omega, remember that this is a part of the broken cycle, but he says this.
Richtofen? Edward, I must assume you're receiving me. We must discuss Monty's plan. If you are to follow through and deliver the souls, it will not resolve the paradox. Yes, the children will grow up and live in their perfect universe. But the blood vials, they will not break the cycle as you believe.
So even Maxis tells us we must discuss Monty's plan. If you are to follow through and deliver the souls, it will not resolve the paradox. Yes, the children will grow up and live in their perfect universe, but the blood vials, they will not break the cycle as you believe. So we are told by Maxis that yes, after Revelations, if we were to carry on, the children would in fact continue to grow up in their perfect universe. But obviously, we don't carry on after Revelations, the cycle resets, and we are sent back to the beginning. So, from the sounds of it, if we were to continue after Rev, the children would go on to live in this perfect world. What they would do then, now that they were grown up, because Monty's perfect universe is in Argotha, I don't believe anyone else lives there, so it would have just been Monty and the children once they're grown up, which is essentially Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai Dempsey, and Samantha, along with Fluffy. I don't know what Monty's plan would have been later on down the line, but that's something we don't have to worry about. The second question of the day from Nathaniel West says, why doesn't Element 115 affect any of the crews? Victus, Leroy, Ultimus, considering Richtofen was at Origins before the others, having massive exposure to it. So you're pretty much asking me, why doesn't Element 115 affect any of our playable characters? Primis, Ultimus, Victus, even other characters we've played as, they've been exposed to 115, but they don't seem to be affected by it. Well, we know that isn't entirely true. Our characters are affected by the element. It has many different side effects, some of them being paranoia, delusion, memory loss. Those are some of the smaller ones. The big main one, of course, being it's able to turn you into a zombie. Characters such as our Primis and Ultimus crew are affected by 115. If you play zombies and just listen to the quotes that our characters say, especially in the earlier days, they mention how they can't remember things. They will often say things to suggest that they are paranoid and delusional. So Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai Dempsey are suffering from side effects of 115. They're not immune to it, however they don't succumb to its main side effect, which is to turn you into the undead. And the reason for this is, in order for it to turn you into a zombie, you first have to die. If we go over to the Chronorium, it says, on January the 26th, 1942, on the data servant, Maxis catalogues locations with prominent Element 115 deposits. He includes information about its various applications and cites that the reanimation of dead cells is a possible side effect. So, 115 reanimates dead cells. In order for your cells to die, you have to die. I mean, you can have some dead cells while you are still alive, but when you die, the cells in your body eventually die too. And it is then that 115 can reanimate those dead cells, bringing you back to life as a zombie. 115 can't reanimate cells if they're still alive, so if you are living, it can't turn you into the undead, which is why Primis, Ultimus, Victus don't have that side effect. They don't die. At least not a part of the actual cycle. We know as they go through the maps, they are killed, but every time they are, the cycle resets, so we don't actually get to see the process of 115 reanimate them, except for one exception, and that's zombie Richtofen. That is the only time we see one of our main characters as a zombie. He came to being buried when, once Maxis took control of the ether, he trapped Richtofen's soul inside of a zombie, creating undead Richtofen, so that situation's a little bit different to how a zombie would usually be formed. And if we look at other situations of zombies in our storyline, in Origins for example, we saw 115 reanimate the dead knights from the Great War. They were buried in the Origins location back in the 1300s. They had been left here for hundreds of years, where in 1918 when Group 935 excavated 115 from the location, the 115 then reanimated the knights' dead cells, bringing them back as zombies. There was also another interesting event that happened in Origins, and that was when Richtofen removed Maxis' brain. The only reason he did this was because Maxis was rendered catatonic by 115. That means he was immobile or unresponsive, not necessarily dead, but the Chrononium tells us Richtofen removed Maxis' brain before he turned into a zombie. Maybe Maxis' catatonic state would have eventually led to him dying, which is when 115 could have reanimated him. We don't see many situations of the element actually rendering people catatonic. The only other example I can think of was in Classified, where if we listen to a radio from Cornelius Purnell, he says this.
This is Cornelius Purnell, report 639, August 3rd, 1963. Earlier today, while Dr. Schuster was performing test number 11, we had an unexpected arrival through the teleporter. We've been unable to verify what year they came from. Our struggle with temporal anomalies during teleportation is well documented, but we are certain of where they came from. The moon. This event alone is baffling enough and is without explanation. But it becomes downright absurd when you take into account that I know two of the four individuals. Corporal Tank Dempsey of the United States Marine Corps, who I knew personally and was declared KIA after a failed rescue op to recover Peter McCabe. And Dr. Edward Richtofen from Group 935, who went missing weeks after we formalized the agreement to initiate Operation Stapler. I didn't recognize the other two, but they and Corporal Dempsey were in a delusional, near catatonic state. Medical evaluation shows they've suffered from excessive element 115 exposure. And quoting our medic, I'm not even sure how they're still alive. As for Dr. Richtofen, initially we believed him DOA. Upon closer examination, we discovered his body is very much alive, just zero brain activity. How it came to be that these four men were on the moon, we may never know. However, for the immediate future, we'll be keeping them here at Groom Lake.
So he pretty much says the scientists at Groom Lake were doing some experiments with the teleporter. They accidentally teleported the Ultimus crew from Moon from the year 2025 back down to Classified in the year 1963. But when the Ultimus crew arrived at Groom Lake, they were in a pretty bad state. He says Dempsey, Takio and Nikolai were in a delusional near catatonic state, and as for Richtofen, they originally thought he was dead on arrival, but upon closer examination, they discovered his body was very much alive, there was just zero brain activity. So that's yet another example of 115 rendering people catatonic. The Ultimus crew became trapped on Moon in the year 2025. We don't know how long they were stuck up there. It could have been a few days, a few weeks, months, or years, but they were trapped on the moon, surrounded by element 115. This obviously caused them to become in a delusional near catatonic state, besides from the exception of Richtofen, who was pretty much almost dead. We know that's because he didn't have a soul. He switched bodies with Samantha on Moon, and then when buried came around, Maxis took Samantha's soul out of Richtofen's body, leaving him without one. But that's another example of 115 leaving people catatonic. However, it still didn't turn them into the undead because they weren't dead, it just left them unresponsive. And then a couple more examples I want to show you is back in Verrucht. This was September the 6th, 1945. We know the 4 Marines that were sent into that facility to rescue Peter McCain, who were Dempsey, John Banana, Smokey and Paxton. When they arrived at Verrucht, they found it overrun by zombies, and eventually after becoming trapped there, they became zombies themselves. Besides from Dempsey, who was captured by Group 935, and except from Paxton as well, he managed to escape, but John and Smokey became infected and turned into the undead. It was also the same for Sophia in Kino der Toten. This is really the only one that doesn't make 100% sense to me, because while working in Kino with Maxis, she was bitten by a zombie, and after learning this, Maxis killed her and then transferred her brain into a machine in order to stop her turning. But I've just said to you guys that if you are attacked or bit by a zombie, this doesn't necessarily mean you turn into one of them. You first have to die, where 115 reanimates your cells, so unless Sophia was dying from the zombie bite, she wouldn't have turned into the undead. Perhaps Maxis didn't know this and just removed her brain for safety in case she turned. That one's a little bit strange. And the last example I want to mention is in Shadows of Evil, where when Element 115 rains down over Morgue City, it begins to affect the people in the surrounding area, where the reporter who was sent in by Mr. Rapt notes that strange mold was growing over the city, which was caused by the 115, and the people living here were getting sick and delirious. 2 side effects of the element. So getting back to your original question, why doesn't Element 115 affect any of the crews? Well, it does. They show side effects. It's just that it doesn't turn them into a zombie because they don't die. Or when they do, the cycle just resets. So guys, there we go. That is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, goodbye.